Manyala, the fastest man in Africa, and you're watching Side Chat with Nashville. Please subscribe and keep following.
Exactly 10 days before the World Cup officially kicks off in Qatar. Where I am right now, it's 10 days to the World Cup. And I think probably by the time you'll be watching this show, the days will be much more less than that. But I'm here to talk about something that is important to the World Cup and is bound to be the pride of Africa. I'm talking about the team selection and the team profile of the Ghana national team. And who better to join me on the show rather than the man himself, Eugene Soti, all the way from Ghana. Eugene works with EIB Network and he's been here on the show before. Eugene, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And I was joking with you. Offline. I'm like, I think I should give you the co-host right to this show.
Oh yeah, let's see how that will
go. Sure, man. It's always nice having you on the show. Very quickly, this past week has had a lot of busy activities happening with relation to teams that will be going to Qatar. And one big thing and the main reason why we are here is to talk about the Ghana national team. The last time we were talking about the Ghana national team, they had been kicked out of the AFCON tournament, sadly. And that's something that you're not really impressed and happy about. And it's interesting how time moved on very fast. So I think it'll be interesting to understand from that time that you had the conversation with relation to the AFCON to now, has there been any changes that have taken place? Because I remember the whole conversation of the manager issue was one of the key things that was there.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me again. So as you said rightly, between February and now, a lot has changed in Ghana with regard to the national team. First off, as you rightly said, after our poorest ever run at the AFCON, where we exited the group stage for the first time in, I think, since 2006. The first casualty after the exit was our head coach, Milovan Rajevac, the Serbian. He took the Ghanaian team to the World Cup in 2010, where we reached the quarterfinal and saved a penalty situation against Uruguay, who would have been the first African country to make it to the semi-final of the World Cup. He was sacked earlier in February. After that, his assistant, who didn't come to the AFCON, Otuado, who is the trainer scout at Borussia Dortmund in Germany, a former Ghana international himself. He was at the 2006 World Cup, Ghana's maiden appearance in his home country, Germany, Otuado. He then took up the mantle as the interim head coach. Then we had two other assistant coaches, George Boateng, who at the time was at Aston Villa's youth team, an assistant coach at Aston Villa's youth team, and then Mas Udidi Dramani. He was a coach of Ghana's female teams, the under 20 and the female team itself. And he was also a coach for FC Norgeland. A lot of the Danish players we see in their national team played in Norgeland. Mohamed Kudus himself played for Norgeland. A lot of the Ghanaian players have a bit of history with Norgeland. And he's also the technical director for Right to Dream Academy, where Kamal Sowa comes from, who plays for Club Brugge, where Kamal Din Suleimana, who plays for Rennes, comes from, and where Mohamed Kudus himself comes from. And so we had a good technical team, as well as Chris Hughton, former Tottenham Hotspurs, former Newcastle, former Brighton coach, former Ireland at the point coach, who was our technical advisor. So we had a quartet or four-man team for our technical team for the Nigeria game. Honestly, Nigeria had a better team in terms of personnel. Ahmed Musa, Victor Osimhen, Moses Simons, Joe Aribo. I mean, they had the men, they had the team, their goal scorers. I think even at the point, Victor Osimhen alone's goals surpassed all the strikers Ghana assembled for the game. But as you would have it, fate would have it, Ghana-Nigeria games is not about form, about individual players, but it's about collective effort. And on the day, Ghana won. Ghana did not win the match, but Ghana qualified via the away goal rule, which I think the Nigerians didn't know at that time. I think their fans didn't know. And afterwards, you saw the uproar. The fans got upset to destroy the stadium and a whole lot of things. I think somebody even lost their life at the stadium, a CAF medical officer. And so since then, things have been pretty much stable, I would say. We've played AFCON qualifiers as well. We beat Madagascar. Then we drew to Central African Republic. So we would say things have changed, but not a lot has changed. The same Black Stars, and we've seen the injection of a few players, Ghanaian players born in the diaspora. Iñaki Williams of Spain, he never really had opportunity to play for Spain, and he got opportunity to play for Ghana. He came to play against Brazil in that friendly. He played against Nicaragua as well. We also had the injection of Tariq Lamptey, former Chelsea and now Brighton player. He scored yesterday against Arsenal. And yeah, we've had also the introduction of Dennis Odoi. So now we've had some bit of fresh legs. And it's interesting because these players have different football orientation. We have an English player in the team. We have a Spanish guy in the team. We have a Belgian in the team as well. Then we also have French, Alexander Djikou. So it's interesting, as well as indigenous Ghanaians, as you would put it. So the Ghanaian team is more like a multicultural system now. Like we in the Belgium national team, there are the Africans, then there are the Dutch-speaking Belgians, and there are the French-speaking Belgians. So Ghanaian team now is a bit of multicultural football identities now. There's Belgian, there's English, there's French, there's Spanish football identity, then there's a Ghanaian football mentality as well.
Okay. One interesting dimension
So
that
there's a new team they are building. There's a Baden team.
Okay. One interesting thing that was happening just before the team selection for the World Cup, two things. One, we saw a lot of African players who are playing in diaspora were like, I want to come back to the national team. Maybe was there like kind of like a motivation for that? Because I think there are a lot of players who now really wanted to identify with Ghana. What is that, would you say, was that motivation for that? Because previously they were applying their trade out there. Is there something that maybe is changing in the Ghanaian sports space, or it's just that pride of having to play for the national team to be selected?
This is a very difficult question to answer because honestly, I might not be in the minds of the players. And another point worth noting is these are different players with different orientations. So what influenced one player will not be exactly what influenced the other. For example, Iñaki Williams, I would say last year he was interviewed and asked the same question whether he would join Ghana. He said, well, no. He felt other people deserved the chance better than he would. He also felt I felt that passion more than him, and he felt more Spanish than Ghanaian. Fast forward, Ghana qualifies to the World Cup, and here is Iñaki Williams. What changed within those 6 months?
Yeah, true.
But for Tariq Lamptey really said he was open to both. And I think he saw at the point that for England, the competition was quite keen. So much so that Trent Alexander-Arnold was likely not to even make the list. We have Kieran Trippier, Kyle Walker, Rhys James, Alexander-Arnold. There are other budding right backs also who are competing with him. And remember, it was because of Rhys James, Tariq Lamptey had to leave Chelsea. So if he's going to meet the same Rhys James in England, it's very likely he will not get an opportunity. If Ghana is calling, and it's likely Ghana has quite a problem with the right back for some years now. So if he comes, he's very likely he will get an opportunity to compete with Dennis Odoi from Club Brugge, who is it's motivated him. And I think the Ghanaian FA might have done something well because I think the kind of people they used to convince these people was good enough. Because at the point, if a former Ghana international who you respect so much calls you and tells you, would you love to play for Ghana? Or you see the effort being put by the Ghanaian FA, our president Keto Kweku made so many trips, spoke to the parents of this place, allayed the fears they had over joining Ghana, and I think they were convinced in the end. However, I must say as well that it's more like they are not getting an opportunity where they are coming from, so they will take the chance here. And remember, the World Cup is the biggest footballing stage you would get. So wherever you are, if you play well, you go up. Asamoah Gyan was at Udinese in 2010. When he played well at the World Cup, he came to the English Premier League to Sunderland. His market value appreciated. I mean, he also got good money in his pocket, and he ended up being one of the richest players in African football. I mean, it's not only Africa, it's not only Ghana. Brian Mbuemo from Brentford in England also joined Cameroon recently, just after they qualified for the World Cup. I would say if they didn't qualify, I doubt he would have joined the team. So it's more like because the team's qualified, then it appeals to the players now because then they have the chance to market themselves on the biggest stage.
Okay. Let's talk briefly about some of the players that were selected to this national team. And from where I'm sitting, I can see the likes of Daniel Amatei, we have Idrissi Babu, we have Baba Ramani, we have Dennis Odoi. The Ayu brothers apparently are going to be in the national squad. Just before we look at some of the players that you think might stand out in this particular tournament, do you feel like for Ayu there's a certain level of pressure for him? You know, he's a senior player, has been in the Ghana squad for the longest time. Going into this World Cup, I'm not sure if this is going to be his last World Cup. I mean, but do you feel like there's a certain level of pressure on him to perform going into this World Cup?
But I mean, you mean Andre or Jordan?
Jordan.
Jordan.
Andrew.
Well,
actually,
I must
both of
say,
them.
Okay. So I think both of them, they are different situations. For example, for Andre Ayew, he's the skipper of the team, so he's guaranteed a place. Jordan is guaranteed a place. I would say not because he's particularly a very good player, but because of his profile. If you are a Ghanaian, or if you know Jordan's footballing background, you would understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be very implicit without explicitly say what I'm trying to mean. If you know who Jordan Ayew is, if you know his footballing background, then you would understand why Jordan Ayew always guaranteed a place, even when he's not particularly in very good form. Because if we are going to be strictly ranking this team to give, to select 25-man squad for the national team, from the 55-man list that was put out, I dare say Jordan might not make the list based on form and the position Jordan was put in. Because there are better players in terms of form in this team than Jordan Ayew. For example, Osman Bukhari, Joseph Pincel, there are others who are better in terms of form. But because of, would say, experience, the 55-man list we saw has only 4 players who have been to the World Cup before. Andre and Jordan Ayew, Mubarak Wakaso, and then Jonathan Mensah. So based on experience, you would say if he has done this at the 2014 World Cup, well, he could replicate that form at the World Cup. For Andre, he's the skipper of the team, and he offers something I think we do not have in this Black Stars team. A player who is very good in aerial duels, good in the air. Andre is not who he was 10 years ago in terms of physical strength, but I think that in terms of his play, aerial ability, and his shooting prowess from long range and short range, I think he's got something. This is where you could say experience will come in handy. But if you've watched the Black Stars recently, he's been played more centrally in central midfield than in attacking. So I would say for starting role for both of them, I doubt. If for anyone, I would say for then it will be for Andre Ayew in terms of striking role. For now, Ghana's team, it will be difficult to give a starting lineup because for Otuado, I see him more to be like Graham Potter of Chelsea. He tweaks formation so much so that you never really know what he wants to do. He could assemble 11 players, and within 15 minutes, he could tweak the formation such that a player would have played four different positions in a space of 10 minutes. So for now, for Andre Ayew, it will be difficult to tell where he'll be put because in the Brazil game, for example, he played more centrally in central midfield. It didn't work too well in the Nicaragua game. In the last 10 minutes, he brought on Andre Ayew again and played him in central midfield. So I get the hint that it is very likely that Andre will be played centrally. For Jordan, in Crystal Palace season, he's been played more centrally on the wings. Has it worked out so well? Not too well. So this question, for me, in terms of performance, for Jordan, he wouldn't make the cut. But because of who Jordan Ayew is, he would make the cut.
Okay. Maybe as we wrap up, would really like to get what are those players that you think people should watch going into the World Cup? And please tell me you're going to mention Felix Afena-Gyan.
Unfortunately, the news we are picking up indicates that Felix Afena-Gyan will not make the list for the Black Stars. That's unfortunate. Even though he played most of the qualifiers I think he played the last two games. That's the playoffs against Nigeria. He was instrumental. Unfortunately, he will not make the World Cup list for a reason, and I would have to explain. There is a reason players do not move from their clubs in a World Cup year, because when you move and that move doesn't materialize, then you are likely to suffer for it. And unfortunately, he has been a casualty. He moved from AS Roma to Cremonese, and unfortunately, the move did not materialize as he would have expected. One, he caught the attention of Ghanaians when he moved to AS Roma, particularly because he was invited by revered Jose Mourinho, the special one. So if the special one invites a player, it means you've also got to be what? Special. So let's invite him and see what's special about him that caught the attention of Jose Mourinho, because on his first game, he scored a brace and he saved Roma, who were losing by 2 goals, who were 2 goals down. He came into the Black Stars and the formation quite didn't suit him well. He was left up top and he was left to run for about 70 minutes. And it was quite promising, but once he was left up top in that formation, he really offered next to nothing for the Ghanaian team. Over 2-3 games, Ghanaians became fed up. And we said, well, if the formation it doesn't suit him, then really he doesn't offer anything for Ghana. Then, so I would say Jose Mourinho inviting him was the canopy that he was under. That was what was shielding him from public criticism. But immediately he left AS Roma and went to Cremonese. That is where he came under public scrutiny, and he has not scored in the Serie A yet. He scored in the Coppa Italia, and he struggled for game time because in Cremonese they also brought 2 other forwards, and quite interestingly, they are Nigerians. Okereke, who was from Spezia, and then there's Cyril Dresses, he was from Feyenoord. Last season in the Europa Conference League, he was the top scorer with Tammy Abraham. So he's a prolific striker brought in with Okereke, who was, I think, one of the leading goal scorers for Spezia in the Serie A last season. So these are 2 proven goal scorers. I doubt they'll be benched for someone who has not really proven his mettle in to start. So his game time has struggled. Unfortunately, I think the list is not yet out, but a lot of speculation. And I must tell you that in Ghana, making the list is not necessarily about being on form. Because in Ghana, we are a football-loving country of 30 million people, and everybody watches football. And we all know which players play well in the various leagues they play in week out. But I will tell you, the list will come out, and the player who we all know is the best player will not make the list. What we are picking up signals tells us that Joseph Pinso, who from the list we have seen is in the winger section, is the best winger we have now. And unfortunately, he's not going to make the list. Why, we don't know. Otuado thinks that he has better wingers than Joseph Pinso. But if you look at statistically, Joseph Pinso is the best winger Ghana has now. I think he has scored about 6 goals and 5 assists. He has even equaled his last season tally already, which means he's in good form. He's been preparing very well for the World Cup, but quite unfortunately, he will not make the list. I think Otuado prefers Fatai Ishaku and Osman Bukari as well as Jordan Ayew to him, which is quite surprising because, as I said, for Ghana, if you're going to make the World Cup list or if you're going to make any list for a tournament, we have something we call here a constituency. You must have a large following to back you. And in African football, it is there. Because I've read a book from Drogba where he says when he initially came into the Ivorian team from France, he didn't really have a support. It was some people from his hometown who came and started supporting him. And with time, once he began to perform, then as I would say, consistency or support began to increase. So once it increased, then he has a large fan base, which will now clamor for calls for you to be included in the national team. So for Ghana, if you do not have a constituency, as I would put it, you are less likely to be called. So that has affected quite a number of players in the team. as well as a player called Majid Asimero. Majid Asimero is one of the players who is performing very well in his club side. He plays for Anderlecht. Unfortunately, it appears he will not make the list. And you know what is interesting about his call-up is Asamoah, who is Ghana's all-time international goal scorer and Africa's leading goal scorer at the World Cup, actually vented on social media about 2 months ago that he was upset that he noticed that for whatever Majid Asimero does, he never seems to make the cut. And we thought the FA would change, but it seems like they are not going to change again. So if you ask me players who are going to impress at the World Cup, I would say Mohamed Kudus is one. He's one we should look out for. Thomas Partey is one we should look out for. Iñaki Williams is one we should look out for. I think Osman Bukhari is one people are not really paying attention to, but he can prove his mettle on the world stage. Also, Mohamed Salisu. Mohamed Salisu plays for Southampton. He was just introduced into the team for the Brazil and Nicaragua games. He was excellent. And if you're going to play a 3-back system, it's very likely Mohamed Salisu, Alexander Djiku, and Daniel Amate will be our preferred defenders. Gideon Mensah as well will be instrumental. Daniel Kofi will be there. And then there's a new guy from France who plays for RC Lens. His name is Salis Abdul Samed. He was invited for the AFCON, but due to injuries, he had to bow out of the team. He sorted out his injuries. He's now back. And he's a very good replacement if we need to strengthen our midfield. And all this will depend on the formation Otuado will play. Does he play the 4-2-3-1? Does he play the 3-5-2? Does he play the 3-4-3 formation? Depending on the formation, then we'll have to see the personnel. So for now, even determining the personnel for Otuado's games is quite difficult because he's somebody who likes to, as I would put it, tinker a lot with his formation. He could change his formation about 4 or 5 times in a game. So for now, things are not too clear for Ghana, but we know those who are likely to make it. Richard Ofori, Joseph Wallacott, and Daniel Amate, Alexander Djiku. So it's very likely there will be quite maybe 4 or 5 surprises, but at least there will be the regulars in the team. So for now, that will be it.
Okay. Eugene, we are going to be having a follow-up discussion with you to just talk about eventually which players are going to make the cut. And as you said, there's a very interesting dynamic to this whole conversation. You say that sometimes the selection is not purely based on performance. That's a very interesting point that I definitely would love to have more conversation on. Well, thank you so much, Eugene, for making time to be on the show. I know we are going to be very busy with you during this World Cup season.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Guys, that's all the time that we had on the show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. In case at the beginning of the show, Eugene mentioned something about the Ghana versus Nigeria game. That was, we called it the Jollof Derby. In case you missed that video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, go back, see what we have to say about that particular team. We had a breakdown of all the activities that took place during that time. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, keep the conversation going, and see you on the next one.